Old is back behind bars this morning after mocking Queensland police on social media following a terrifying armed carjacking. Wielding an axe and shovel, it's alleged the boy and his accomplice stole the car as the victim was backing out of their Brisbane home. It's raised fresh questions as to whether young offenders are getting off too lightly in the Sunshine State. Let's bring in criminologist and former detective Dr. Terry Goldsworthy. Terry, good morning to you. Thank you so much for being with us. This was a very brazen post. Do these teens just think they can get away with it?
Yeah, look, I think what we're seeing here is we've got a hardcore of offenders. We know in Queensland that 17% of our youth offenders commit about 50% of the crime, and you would think that this fellow may fall within that bunch. So that grouping has grown from 10% a couple of years ago, and they just show a disregard for the law, for the systems of justice that we have. And you can see that from the social media posts that he put up there, obviously deliberately to taunt the police, but also increase his own standing amongst his cohort. And it also illustrates the poor bail decisions that we're continuing to see in Queensland. We know that 53% of youth offenders on bail go on to commit an offence on bail, and 7% of those offences involve death or serious injury to members of the public. So it's simply not good enough.
Those figures are, well, chilling. Do they surprise you at all?
Look, I mean, I don't think they do. We've seen a number of years here in Queensland where the current government has really weakened the rule of law in terms of how we deal with juvenile offenders. And by that I'm saying the focus was entirely on the offender, and we've seen very little consideration of the community safety aspects or the victims in these matters. And what you've seen in recent months is, I think the community has said enough is enough, we want some action taken here. And we've seen some rollout of policies by the government which to some examination haven't been overly effective. I mean, we're still waiting for trackers to be treated seriously and put on as serious repeat offenders. At the moment, trackers go on kids who are compliant, living at home or stable environment and have a support person. Well, they're not the people who you need to track. They're not going to go out and offend.
Yeah, it's tough. It's such a balance you've got to strike, isn't it, between protecting the community and punishing these kids. That's the key here, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, we're not talking about people, kids who go and do their, shoplift for the first time. I mean, they're going to come into the justice system and go out. And, we also realise that the causations of serious youth offending are multifactorial in terms of DV in the house, drug use by the youth offender, and also in the household, a lack of engagement, etc. But, we had about 22,000 matters dealt with, youth matters dealt with in Queensland in 2021-22. Only 1% of those actually resulted in any a youth being detained. So, we're not sending all our kids off to jail, which is often the perception we're told. Yeah. What we should perhaps look at doing is, rather than increasing maximum sentences, which have no effect whatsoever, is look at introducing for these serious repeat offenders some mandatory minimum sentences so they realise that we're now serious about stopping crime.
You speak a lot of sense, Terry. We've got to go. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
In a